grew up, did what I believe every teenager does, and what I kind of thought all my mates were doing. I had girlfriends, I went out drinking, I did the party stuff. When I had an opportunity to leave my hometown, I got out of there. I was sick of it. And I went over to a place called Jersey and started work out there. And as I arrived, the rave scene, so it's quite a few years back now when the rave scene just first started kicking off. The thing is with the rave scene, I got into drugs quite quickly. But the taking of drugs kind of spiraled into selling drugs, importing drugs, and then it had me in prison. Now, I'd never been involved with the police at all in my life. So one morning when I was in a house with the police, woke up to a really, really loud bang with police running in. I woke up with a gun pointing to my head, policeman on his knees telling me that I better not move or my brains would be all over the back wall. That's actually what a policeman shouted at me. I spent just under a year in a little cell, about 9 foot wide by about 13 foot long, very grey, on your own, locked up about 23 hours a day. It was really, really tough, really, really tough. I kind of, in that place, as I just existed, kind of said to myself, I'm never going to be in trouble again. I'm never going to be in this situation ever again. So when I got out of prison, I tried in my own strength to make life purposeful, make something out of it. So as I travelled around the country looking for a home and looking for purpose, it wasn't long, I would say maybe 18 months, 2 years after that, that I got back into the rave scene, got back into taking drugs. That spiraled again to selling drugs. Kind of a pattern emerged. And this time it kind of went from a small amount of selling drugs to a larger amount and to quite a big amount. And again, not proud of this, but I just wanted to share with you the reality of what can happen in life. On that journey of the selling drugs again, I was caught again. And rather than going to prison, I went on the run. I went on the run for 7 years of my life. I took a new identity. I went into hiding, and I lived a life with extreme stress and anxiety, wondering if the police were going to come around the corner at any minute. I remember every month sitting with a bag at the end of the couch, watching Crime Watch, just waiting for my face to pop up so I could run again. So the stress, every time a car door went out, I think it was for me. During that time, I thought, I've got to hand myself in. I've got to face the music, so to speak, and make something of my life in the future. So I put myself back through college, did a little bit of study, did well in that, and then handed myself back in. I went into prison, and I was looking at a 7-year sentence for the drugs that I was involved with. And this is where it got interesting. Crazy thing is, I remember at 31 years old, grown man, coming off the phone, I had a phone call to my mum, and I'll be honest with you, I cried and cried and cried. I came off the phone, put the phone down, and I remember walking back along this grey landing, feeling just lost and hopeless, and crying my eyes out. I can just remember thinking, what is the point of this life? If this is it, if this is what it's amounted to, then I don't want it. And I meant that. I don't want this if this is all it is. And I could look back on my life and think, I've made a complete mess of everything. Absolutely everything. And I remember at that time, kind of raising my head a bit, and I believe now this was a prayer. And I said, but if this is real, prove it. And as the weeks went on, I was kind of thinking, do you know, if only I could rub the past out, if I could only restart something, if I could only have a second chance. And man, I'd had a few chances. So for me, it was maybe a third, fourth, fifth, sixth chance. But in me, I was like, there has to be something more. So it was 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, I had a knock on my cell door in the evening, about 7 o'clock in the evening. And it's a bit spooky when you get visitors in the evening. You don't get visitors in prison much anyway. Lots of people forget about you. And I was forgotten about. But at 7 o'clock one evening, I had a knock on my cell door, and the prison officers came and got me and said, "Thomas, you've got a visitor." Now I was a little bit, whoa, what's going on here? And this little old lady looked out and she smiled at me, and I smiled back. And she looked at me and she said, "You've got a lovely smile. Do you know God's got a plan for your life?" Which was a little bit weird. Well, it was very weird, if I'm honest. I'm standing there in a men's prison with a little old lady looking up at me, telling me that I've got a lovely smile and that God's got a plan for my life. I could see myself 2 weeks earlier saying, "If you're real, prove it." Now, what I believe is God sent a little old lady into a prison to talk to me out of thousands of prisoners to tell me, "I heard you and I want to change your life, Ray. Everything that you've prayed about, I can do." So as I looked through this little booklet in my cell, it told me about a guy called Jesus. And it told me, as I was flicking the pages, it told me who he was, what he'd done, how he'd lived, how he died, and how he went back to heaven to be with the Father, to help in my relationship, to forgive sin, to reconcile, to put everything back right that was wrong in this world, in our relationship with God. And as I read through it, I saw in there forgiveness. I saw in there acceptance. I saw in there a hope for Ray. A young man that started out with lots of hopes and dreams and made a complete mess of his life. What I saw in there is a God that didn't judge me, that didn't say, "You're not worthy." You see, he'd done that to his own son. He'd let his son take the punishment, pay the price for all the wrong that I did, and said, "Ray, I love you. I want you back. I want life and purpose for you. There's my second, third, fourth, fifth chance." And there was a little prayer in the back of this book. And the prayer just was what people call a believer's prayer. It's not a magic prayer or anything. It's just a prayer to say, "Lord, I'm sorry. I want you in my life." And it was kind of everything that I'd been hoping for in this little prayer after I'd read about this life, this man called Jesus, that I could have a proper relationship with God. My life could have purpose. I could be forgiven. I could have hope. I prayed that prayer twice. I was like, "You better be listening." And that was the start of my journey in relationship with Jesus.